When Jackie Barrie was president of the PSA UK Southeast region, she became renowned for using audience participation in her talks and training sessions. In response to demand from other PSASA members, she wrote a book of icebreakers and energizers for speakers and trainers, and it's called Experiential Speaking. Now, you might wonder if right now is the best time to be launching a book on experiential speaking. You might be interested to know that even before COVID-19 came around and Jackie was in the stages of finalizing the book, there were already 12 exercises out of the 34 that could already be used online, which is fairly interesting. And she's busy developing a whole lot more, of which she's going to be sharing some of them with us. So I'd like to warmly welcome from Kent in the UK, Jackie Barrie. Hello, Jackie.
Hi, Paul. Hi, everybody. It's great to see you all.
And let me launch straight into it. Why did you call your book Experiential Speaking?
It's because experiential learning is a phrase that's been around since the 60s. It came from some work done, I'll have to look up his name now. Oh, it's in my book. Hang on. Edgar Gale, and he did some work about the cone of learning. And he found that people remember more when they actually do something than if they just hear it, or they just read it, or they just see it. And I'm a copywriter by trade. My business is to writing, selling messages, which might be website, might be on screen, it might be on paper, it might be face-to-face through a talk. And knowing this made me realize sometimes the best way to get a message across is by an activity that your audience undertakes. And they will more likely remember the activity, thing you said, thing you did, or anything they read. So, experiential speaking is the art of using audition, but always in the support. It's icebreakers and energizers and games that speakers and trainers and presenters and facilitators can use, but always with a learning outcome.
Yeah,
that's where the name came from.
So that word experiential is an interesting one, because I think what we find is that when we do something, we not only retain it longer, but in a sense we get what I like to refer to as realizations. And we don't get that the same way by being lectured to. We get it through experiencing it ourselves and getting that aha moment.
Yes, and good speakers will give their audience an experience anyway. It might be an experience of great storytelling or an emotional journey that you take them on. But these are experiences that they do. Yeah. And I think it's become even more important in the virtual world, because we know about Zoom fatigue, and we know sitting and looking at a lot of people in little boxes is very exhausting. And I've been doing online training courses ever since this pandemic began. Sometimes for a whole day, that's a lot of attention that you're expecting from people. And I make sure they have an activity at least every 15 minutes.
So that's the trick.
What we'll be doing today.
Yeah, so that is the trick, not allowing a period of longer than 15 minutes to endure before you get them involved and re-engaged again through some kind of activity.
Well, some people would say attention span even less than 15 minutes, but because we're all about trying to engage our audience, it's probably a good cue for me to suggest some of the ways that you can start an online meeting.
Show us.
Okay. You know that often there's 2 or 3 minutes while everybody arrives, and often you're left with a bit of chit chat while you're waiting for everyone to come. Where in the physical world at an event, you're going to come out on stage and you're going to have a big grand opening statement that grabs all their attention. In the virtual world, it's not the same. In the physical world, people can straggle in late and sit down at their tables without interrupting the flow of things. But in the virtual world, it's not the same. So here are some ideas for some stuff you can do in that little gap, which might be managed by your co-host rather than by the host. First of all, you can use tools like the whiteboard. In a small meeting, you can ask people, well, where in the world are you from? And you can get them to draw on the whiteboard a little drawing that gives them a clue about where they are from. Now, in my case, if anyone wants to unmute or type in the box, can you identify my drawing?
David Bowie.
Yeah, the reason I drew David Bowie is because my hometown is Beckenham, and that's the town where he became famous. So all the people waiting to arrive, drawing a little thing that indicates their town or their country, and start a little conversation while you're waiting for everyone to arrive, so the meeting can start with a big bang when you're ready. At the same time, if you don't want to share the whiteboard and people don't have the annotation tools turned on, or they're using tech or it makes it difficult for them to draw, you can just get them to type in the chat panel. If you haven't got that panel open, it's the speech bubble, which will be at the bottom of your screen if you're on a desktop or laptop, the top of your screen if you're on a tablet or phone.
And Jackie, maybe this is a good opportunity to just remind people that there's also a reactions box at the bottom. So if you hear something that like really elates you, please give the speaker a round of applause or a thumbs up. We love receiving a bit of love, don't we?
Since this is an interactive session, I'm going to say now, Paul, you said we've got people from several continents. If you want to type your hometown or your home country in the chat, then we can see where you all are. And I'll wave at Annabelle Kay because I'm in South London and she's London too. Brilliant. Athens in the USA. Look at these lovely list of places coming up. So this is Richard's here. There's all these lovely people I remember meeting when I was in Cape Town. And Canada we've got. Oh, it's so exciting. So this is something you can be doing with your attendees. Another thing you can do is, and obviously your host or your co-host can then react to all those places, and perhaps someone in one town sees someone else on the call is from the same town that they didn't know, and then there's a new connection made, which is a lovely thing that might happen over the coffee table if you were in a hotel together.
Well, there is something here, Jackie, that's really interesting, is that East London has popped up a few times. Now, automatically, if you're in the UK, you'll think, well, that's where Alan Stevens comes from. But actually, it's East London, which is a coastal town in the eastern province of South Africa.
So it is. I like that specificity. And
okay, so Jackie, I have a question to ask you. You're a copywriter of about 30 years experience. So you're the kind of person that turns people's writing into something that really flows beautifully, and you get rid of all the waffle and what have you. How does inventing icebreakers and energizers fit in with being a copywriter?
Oh, exactly. And I don't want to confuse anybody about the services I provide, because my job is about communicating a message down the right channel. When you know what's in your head and you need to choose the right way to get it into the head of the person that's listening to you. And sometimes the written word on screen, sometimes it's the written word on paper, sometimes it's a spoken word at an event, and sometimes it's an activity that they undertake. And that's where the icebreakers and energizers fit in. It's always, always, always about communicating the message in a memorable and engaging way.
Yeah, where do you get all these ideas from?
Oh, I've always been into what is now called gamification. I gamify everything. And I have, as I've got older, embedded even more fun and playfulness in everything I do, because laughter and a lightness of touch, it's just a way of grabbing and keeping attention and generating a good feeling. So I get ideas from TV shows, I get ideas from kids games, I get ideas from party games and board games, and it's a case of creatively adapting that to think, how will that work in a business context when there is a point?
But isn't it true, Jackie, that if you focus your mind in a particular direction, let's say you like putting humor into your presentations, you tend to then always be looking for humor in situations. If you're a person that likes making puns, you're always looking for the pun all the time. So in a sense, what you've probably done is you've trained your mind to, every time there's an opportunity that you pick up on in real life, you could say, hey, maybe I can turn that into a game or an icebreaker.
Yeah, I do. I can't help it. And people keep asking me for more and more ideas, and I'll come up with bespoke ideas that else is using, just because that's the way my brain happens to work. Yeah. And yeah, so it just, I think we can all use more fun in our lives. There's no limit on it.
Yeah, but I'm amazed that you can actually engage an audience for a full day. I mean, that really must be quite exhausting in an online environment where you're not getting that immediate feedback from people that are in the room with you, but you might be seeing a few people on the screen. So perhaps you'd like to share with us some of the examples of things you do and how you kind of mix it up to make it more interesting. So it's not just like the 8th icebreaker that's similar to the previous one.
Yes, well, I really don't like doing icebreakers that are like anybody else's. It's always, all my ideas are open for being adapted to suit your own brand, your own clients, and your own learning outcome. And you're right, training for a full day on Zoom is exhausting, but actually training for a full day in the same room with 8 people or 12 people, that's exhausting too, because you're on all day and you need to be ready for anything. So it's actually not different. As long as you use the tools that are at your fingertips in a way to keep people involved. So let me come back to just one other standard starting point that I have at the beginning of a session. I'll share screen to show you what I do. I use a poll, and I start with a poll about the device people are using. Now, this isn't one you can actually click. It's just a screenshot of me having set up a poll. So I'll ask them if they're on a desktop, laptop, tablet, or smartphone. Why that is useful, again, it gives them something to do while they're waiting for the meeting to start, but it also gives me or my co-host a clue about which instructions to give them when I'm telling them to click things or do things. Because, for example, reaction icons, you can't use if you're on a small screen, but you can on a big screen. It's important. All right. Let me just double check what else we can do with polls. If you're in the coaching world, you could have a poll that's a judge of how are you feeling today on a scale of 1 to 6. That will give you the mood of the room when you've got the results of the poll. If everyone's on a 1, which is low, that is going to change the attitude and the flavor that you give your introduction and your talk. Or if everyone's a 6 and they're all on a high, then you're probably going to flex the way you deliver your content. You could also have a poll, which I sometimes do if people are working from home, to ask if they've got children in the house and they're trying to homeschool, or if they've got other distractions at home, because that also guides me as the trainer as to what they are experiencing in their house, and therefore an understanding of what their environment is like helps me judge the best way for me to get my content across. The other thing you can do with polls is as a revision exercise, because you can set them up for multiple choice pub quiz. And at the end of your day, if you've tried to embed certain messages and you want to measure their understanding, you can use a multiple choice poll to get people voting on what they've learned or what they thought of your session, or there's any creative ways you can use them. And we know that it's not just Zoom polls you can use. There's tools like Slido and Mentimeter that can be even more creatively graphic than Zoom polls can. But one of the big issues with sitting in front of a Zoom screen all day is you're very passive, stuck in your chair. So if there are things you can do that make people move around, that can be a good thing as an energizer. In the neuroscience, you're getting people's attention back, you've got the blood flow going, there's more oxygen running around your body and to your brain, so they're more likely to pay attention. And there are various things you can do, such as set up a treasure hunt. That's what you're going to do now. You're going to
treasure hunt online.
An online treasure hunt in your house, or wherever it may be. Your task is, and this isn't a race, by the way, health and safety warning. No one fall over and end up in A&E because you've hurt yourself. It's not a good time to do that. It's never a good time to do that. You really don't want to do it right now. So somewhere in your house, find something blue and bring it back and hold it in front of the camera so that the whole screen's going to turn blue. Off you go.
Right.
Look at that, look at that. We've got a blue sign. It's never too late to have a happy childhood. Love it. There's a book cover. We've got some, is it eggs? A blue duck, Annabelle. I'd expect nothing less. That's fantastic. Okay, you can take that away now. And you can see you get some great screenshots if you do something like that. But you can go through the whole rainbow and talk about the creativity of what things people have found in all the different colours to wave in front of their camera. You can also, this is a sort of show and tell, where you say to people, what have you got on your desk within reach that tells a story? And this would be a getting to know you introduction session, not with a giant group, but with a small group. So let's say I've got a blue pen. And this reminds me that when I started my career in the catalogue industry, and you used to have to mark up copy with a pen on paper, all the copywriters used blue, all the graphic designers used green, and all the buyers used red. So you knew who'd written what. And as a copywriter, I just don't feel right if I use any other colour pen but blue. So there's a little thing that tells you a story. You now know something else about me. And if you go around your virtual room and everyone reaches something and tells you a little story about it, you've got a bit of bonding, a bit of team building, a bit more insight into who you'll be working with during this session. On the subject of physical props, you have to use the icons that are in the participant panel where you can tick for yes and cross for no. You can do what Lee does, and he's made little signs. So you can prepare little signs that you can hold up to the camera, and they can say anything that you want them to say. You can be creative with how you make them. And you can have any kind of reactions that you feel that you might need. And if you want to, you can prepare some of this stuff, put it in a Dropbox folder or email it, or even post it in the physical post to your attendees. So they've got a set of branded little signs or props they can use during your meeting. And because they will be physically picking things up and showing them to their webcam, they are more likely to be engaged than passively sitting back and just absorbing the information that you are trying to get across. You can use props for voting. You can have coloured cards that you post to them or you give them to out. So if someone agrees with what you say, they hold up the green card. If you disagree, it's the red card. Thank you for someone saying, cool, that's Shelley, great, love it. Or if they're not sure, you've got the amber card. Now, for kind people, you'd need to write the words on the cards as well, because not everybody can see colours. So you need to be a bit careful. And with the card trick, if you want to vary your presentation content a bit, I know Alan Stevens does this, Lee Jackson does it. You can have pick a card, any card, and you get your audience to choose a number. Let's say they choose number 3. So you pick card number 3. It's got the topic written on it and the topic that you talk about. And it is up your content in an order that's more interesting for you to deliver, but in a way that the audience is more engaged in driving the down the route you want them to. And I feel like I've done a lot of talking, so it's time for another game. And for this game, you're going to need a piece of paper or a sticky note. So you might have to get up and move around again and find yourself a piece of paper and a pen or some sticky notes. And I can see people are rummaging around to find things. And on your piece of paper, now this one is from my book, but it's also all over Google. I didn't invent this. You're going to draw a pig. That's a farmyard animal. And you've got a few seconds. I can see Paul has a model pig that he can copy.
I have Priscilla here, and I've been very neglectful because I normally offer Priscilla something to drink, and I've neglected her. So there we go, Priscilla. She's feeling much better now.
That's good to know. When you've drawn your pig, you hold it up to the camera. And I will very quickly give you the interpretation. According to Google, which means it's not scientific, the pig drawings. Okay, if your pig's towards the top of the paper, you have a tendency to be positive and optimistic. If it's the middle of the paper, you tend to be realistic. Towards the bottom, you could be pessimistic and be prone to behaving negatively. If it faces left, you tend to believe in tradition, you're friendly, and you might remember dates very well. If it faces right, you're innovative and active, but you might forget dates and may not have a strong sense of family. If it faces front, you tend to be direct. You might enjoy being devil's advocate, and you don't fear or avoid confrontational discussions. With lots of details, you tend to be analytical, and you could be cautious and distrustful with few details. You could be emotional, focus on the big picture rather than detail. You could be a risk taker and prone to reckless and impulsive decisions. If there are fewer than 4 legs showing, you could be living through a period of major change, and let's say, who isn't? But anyway, as a result, you may be feeling insecure. With 4 legs showing, you are more secure, you stick to your ideals, but people might call you stubborn. With big ears, it shows how good a listener you are, and the longer the tail it has, show your pigs again, that shows how happy you are with the quality of your sex life. According to Google. Like I say, it's not scientific, but that's a lovely little thing that you can adapt for your own session. You can make them draw whatever you want. Doesn't have to be a pig. You can make the interpretations whatever you want, but it gets a laugh, especially with a group who think they know each other already. And if you start off with a laugh, they're more likely to listen to you for the rest of the session. And it's a fun thing. And thank you for laughing, because you're all on mute, but I could see laughter was happening, and that's very satisfying to know that it worked. Now, I asked for another piece of paper. You're going to need an A4 piece of paper for this one. Where the pig personality profile is useful is if you're going into a session about psychometric profiling, for example, or anything to do with personality, because you can start off with the pig thing, get the laugh, make sure you give the disclaimer that that's not real. But I can tell you I did do that once, and one man in the audience took his pig home to show his wife, and I have no idea why. But now you've got your blank piece of paper. Now, off camera, you don't need a pen for this one. Off camera, fold your piece of paper in half and tear off a little bit in the top right hand corner. Fold it in half again, tear off another little piece in the top right hand corner, fold it in half a third time, tear off a piece in the top right hand corner, fourth time, fold it up, tear off a piece in the top right hand corner. Nikki, I have to apologise, this one's not very Nikki Abdinor friendly, but, but you can give the instructions.
That's okay.
When you've done it, open up your paper and show it to the camera. And if you've got exactly the same as me, I'll pay 10 English pounds, or 10 British pounds, I should say, to your favourite charity. So has anyone, hold them all up, has anyone got the same as me? Has anyone got the same as each other? Let's have a look. Ooh. It looks to me, let me look at the other screen, as though they're all completely different. How do you use that activity? My money is safe. How do you use that activity? Let's say you want to talk about diversity. Well, that's a really quick and easy exercise that shows how different everybody is, but nobody was actually wrong. Everyone's very compliant and obedient. People did what they were asked to do.
Yeah.
And people obeyed those instructions to the best of their ability. So the other message you can take from this is maybe one about communication. If I actually wanted you to reproduce what I did, you had to see it. That would be an example of a communication channel where the phone won't work, where email and written instructions won't work. The only way to achieve that task is by watching. So the proper channel for that task would be a video demonstration telling you which way to turn the paper, how big to tear the corner, which way to fold it, and then you could match what I did. So I've done lots of talking now.
Okay, so what I wanted to ask you, Jackie, is that in preparing for a longer session, what I imagine that you would do is that you would prepare certain exercises to assist you to make a particular point or get somebody or your audience to experience a certain thing. But then, of course, you would have other ones in your back pocket just in case scenarios cropped up where you'd need to bring in another game that wasn't planned. How do you manage that kind of thing?
I've got all kinds of games in the back of my head. And one of them has just come to my mind, so maybe we should play it. It's a game where you need to be able to turn your camera off. So on a big screen, it's the video icon at the bottom. On a small screen, it's the video icon at the top. And the second thing you need to be able to do is hide non-video participants. Now, how you do that? On a big screen at the bottom, where it says the video icon, there's a little up pointing arrow, and then it says video settings, and there's a tick box there at the bottom of the list that says hide non-video participants. Alternatively, you can hover only any of the black boxes, and in the corner of the black box are three little dots. And if you click the three little dots, it says hide non-video participants, and all those people will disappear on the screen. And you all have to do it. It's not something the host can override. So I know 32 people have turned their camera off. I can see 6 people left on screen. Oh, we've gone down to 5, 4. And so if you turn your camera off, all that will be left is the one person. Now, if you turn your cameras back on again, those people will reappear. Now, how you can play with that is if you want to do a presentation with just a few people presenting, that's how you can do it, but you are at the mercy of people obeying instructions, which generally they will do, or you can turn it into a game. And the game that you can play is called Never Have I Ever. And the game is another getting to know you game. Never have I ever, for example, seen the film Rocky. So if you have seen the film Rocky, turn your camera off. If you haven't seen the film Rocky, turn your camera on. And all the people who haven't seen Rocky, there are 5 of us, oh, 4 of us, hello, it's just us that haven't seen Rocky. Then you pick another topic. Let's say, never have I ever baked my own bread. If you have baked bread, turn your camera off. And if you've never baked your own bread, turn your camera on. And now we have got a whole bunch of people. Hello, everybody that's never made bread. I know lots of people over here in the UK have started making bread suddenly.
That is so clever. So actually what you're doing is, in a sense, you're teaching them to use the controls of the platform by turning it into a game. It's absolutely ingenious.
I've got, if you want to turn your cameras back on, that's fine. I've got one more thing that I would normally end a Zoom session with, which is a revision type exercise. And you know that normally we speakers are trying to communicate learning points that we want people to remember. And how do you test people have remembered it or not? during your call? Well, you can play a game. And one of the games you can play is, in my book, I call it the hat game, because you fold up all your jargon phrases and on bits of paper and put them in a hat, and you pass the hat around the table. On a Zoom call, the replacement is you can still do that if you're the host, you can still have them bits of paper in a hat, but you would type each clue as a private message in the chat. Now, you know, in chat, you can send a public message that goes to everyone, or you can click the little blue drop down arrow and you can send a private message just to one person on the call. So I, the host, would work out whose turn it is, and I would send them a private message saying, here's your clue. That person then has to play charades. They have to act out the word or phrase without saying anything while everyone else guesses. They get 1 or 2 minutes to see how many clues they can get through, keep scores as you go along. You go through all the words in the hat, and the second round, you have the same words, so it's easier for people to guess because they might remember what all the words are from the first time. But the second time, you play the game Articulate, which is where you describe what's on the piece of paper without acting it. So you go round again, get another round of scores, and you could do a round where they have to draw it using the whiteboard or a tablet or a piece of paper and holding to the camera. And there's about 15 different games you can play. Now, what's happening with that psychologically is they're going through the same words and phrases, the ones you're trying to teach them, again and again and again, but they're coding them in their brain in lots of different ways, physically, verbally, and they're more likely to remember than they are from some dry theory. So I do love ending with, if it's a poll with a quiz in it, some kind of revision exercise that's turned into a game. And that way, people are more likely to have learning embedded. They're more likely to remember it because they've been part of learning it, not just passively receiving it. Shelley, I can see your hand is up.
Yes, a couple of things visually that I've been looking into is, let's say you need to be the focus because you're doing an input. Apparently, if you spotlight your video, then that makes you big and you can unspot and unspot your video. If you were in a very, so that's just one comment, but the question is, if you were in a very businessy kind of crowd as opposed to a playful crowd, and you'd like to playfulize, as opposed to plagiarize, playfulize a rather staid group, what would you recommend, like from the beginning?
I'll pick up your first point first, which is that yes, you or the co-host can spotlight whoever is the main speaker, but people have control of their own voice and they can override it. So you can't be sure what they see. If they want to switch to gallery view, can. If they want to pin somebody's video and therefore on their own device spotlight someone else, they can. In the same way that in the same film, you can't force them to look at you. They might go and look at whoever's sitting next to the fire exit if they want. You
Right.
Can't force them, but you can attempt to spotlight somebody. The second one is your new word. We have a new word, playfulize. It will make it to the dictionary. Credit Shelley Rose Charvet. Yes, you would have to judge which games you choose and how you introduce them to your audience. And of course, some audiences are more staid and less playful. For me, I've got a talk next week to a group of very senior leaders who have a brilliant sense of humour, but wouldn't want you to know it. And I actually sat in on their last month's meeting to work out how I could pitch my gamification to make sure it hit the mark. And for them, the paper tearing will work because you can very immediately draw a serious message from it and then send them off into breakout rooms where they can discuss it and discuss what they've learned from it. And it is ever so slightly disruptive. I have a speaker in the Far East that I have been in contact with a while back, and over there culturally tearing paper and throwing it around would be really disruptive. But the clue, I think, with all these things is if you are willing to make yourself more of a fool than anybody else, it gives permission to everybody else. And it is also the setting up of it in advance. If they know it's active and they know they partake in participative games or activities, then they, for my session at least, people turn up prepared and ready for it.
Jackie, you've just been paid the ultimate compliment. Leslie's put in the chat box that this session was far too short. So in a sense, we need to be looking for opportunities and thinking up our own games. And it's not really that difficult because some of the games you did, like the paper tearing exercise, was really got us engaged. And everyone was looking to see, well, what does everyone else's paper look like? So it's just often very, very simple ideas that get us engaged and make it more interesting. Okay, so there's lots of compliments coming up in the chat box. So Jackie, I'd just like to say, firstly, thank you for agreeing to come on the interview. We've got lots of fabulous ideas from you. It's been the most interactive session that I've been involved in, so it's really been fabulous. And everyone, thanks for joining, and also to those that are going to be watching this on recording.